think that, like, what I want to say about this is love your neighbor as yourself. I
Mm.
feel like these days it gets used as, well, you have to spend more time loving yourself first before you can love your neighbor.
Mm.
What do you
Mm.
think about that?
Yeah, in the social media context, I've also come across people who have said that, like, you actually need to love yourself first and then love your neighbor. And I've
Yes.
always yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go on, continue. Because they
Oh no,
spend
no,
so much time loving themselves that they probably never
They
get to
never
the
get to
loving
their
your neighbor
neighbor.
part.
that's the thing. Yeah, and I struggle to understand it too when I hear them say it, because they make it sound like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, how can you give your love to someone if you don't love yourself? But that's not what is really being emphasized really here. Kind of vibes.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I get the idea that people go with when they say love your neighbor as yourself, which means you have to love yourself first. Um, but there is, okay, let me deal with why people say it.
Yeah.
If you they say it in the context, okay, no, actually, here's the thing. We are in a very individualistic society. So when we say this, we tend to break ourselves off out as individuals
Yeah.
alone. These things have come from very community-based world, community-based societies, right? So the way they say it and the way they think about and they conceptualize it is very different. We and the way they will see the world is that we are connected to each other. That's the way these communities lived. In our world now, we see ourselves as individualized people. It is me, myself, and I. Somebody that somebody that didn't give birth to themselves will one day stand up and say that they are a self-made millionaire. You know, they didn't create their language. They didn't create their own language. They didn't create their face. They didn't give birth to themselves. They didn't teach themselves English or any whatever language they speak. It's usually English, but they will say, I'm a self-made this and that. How can you be self-made? Even if your family abandoned you, someone, human beings contributed to who you are and who you became.
Yeah.
The same way, whoever, the same way, we distance ourselves from the criminals that come out of our societies, right?
Yeah.
Because those criminals come out of the society that we created. We are connected to each other. And so sometimes we have to also take responsibilities of the criminals we get. So one of the things that I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, but I'll come to the point in a minute. One of the things that I always say to people that come from my country, they always talk about the politicians there, like if those politicians were imported. Oh, our government is so bad. Our government is so bad. And sometimes I tell, like, wait, hang on. The government, who are these people? Are they foreigners? Are they people that are from this country? Right? They are from the country. They are not imported. Right? All the things our government do, you can go on the street and see people doing it as well. Right? So if is the government corrupt, well, go on the street and go to the market and see how people will try to cheat you. Right? So what the society itself creates, its best and its worst come out of the people in the society because we're all connected to each other. But the lie we like to tell ourselves in modern world is that we are individuals, separated. So in that context, when people say, oh, I have to love myself first, and then when I finish loving myself, then I'll be able to love you, that makes sense to them. But in a community, in a world where people lived as community, they wouldn't see it like that, because loving you, there's an extent where loving you gives something to me. Do you understand? When you give to others, we're created out. Now, there's a reason why the Apostle Paul said is blessed. Is blessed, is more blessed to give than to receive. He's not just being theological, or he's not just convincing people to give. There's an extent or a human nature where it is human nature where it is human nature where giving to others gives something to you as well, right? And think about raising children and the sacrifice you have to give. Sometimes you're not well, but you have to stand up and give to your child, right? They always say, oh no, but think about being a parent where you have to get up even when you're not well, you're tired. You have to go and tend to your child. Think about doctors that are working in war zones,
Yep.
right? Sometimes
Yeah.
they're up for 24 hours straight tending to others, because it's more blessed to give than to receive. There is something in nature that we are designed
Mhm.
that way, right? So
Mhm.
while we would try to disconnect the individual from this question, it
Mhm.
doesn't work that way. You're inside it. So love your neighbor as yourself is not something we break up into two things,
Yeah.
right? In loving your neighbor, there's a love for self in there as well. And in
Mhm.
loving yourself, there's a love for neighbor, right? So,
Yeah.
however, the way, and I think in the Gospel of Luke adds another dimension to this, because what these people did, and this is what the community-based people did, what they did was try to redefine who is a neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
Who should I love? So who
Mm.
is my neighbor? Right? So I think in Luke the question comes back, okay, Jesus, who is my neighbor? Then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, right? The
Mm.
story of the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor?
Mm.
Right? So that's where they've done it. And for us now, I think this is the other difference that we have in our world. The question of who is my neighbor now becomes a little more fuzzy in our world, actually, because
Also.
the world is so in this context where all these books are written
Ah,
and all this happened. The world
yeah.
is very big.
Yeah.
In our context, the world is very small, right?
Mm.
We we can we can talk to people and relate with people who live thousands of miles away
Yeah.
or hundreds of miles away. We can relate and communicate with them like if they are present to us. So the definition of who our neighbor is then extends to
Mm.
most of humanity. But
Mm.
again, that then creates another dynamic, because I heard about a story. One of these teachers, professors was talking about this, about a woman who was racist to the neighbor that lives next door to her, but she was giving money to charities and stuff to people who were victims of crime and war in a different part of the world. So she saw that as being concerned for her neighbor. But her
Mm.
neighbor were people who lived thousands
Right.
of miles away.
Mm.
But the people who lived next door to her, she was racist towards them.
Mm.
So we have to be sure of who is my neighbor. That
Yeah.
question of who is my neighbor is what people start redefining. But I guess we've become tired of redefining that and just change the rule to say, look after yourself first. And
So
when you
first.
finish looking after yourself, look after other people.
Mm. Yeah.
But again, okay, just to add a final bit on that, don't want to dismiss it outright, because there is there is a sense where if you are not right,
Mm.
you still cannot. What you give to other people is hurt.
Yeah.
You understand?
But can we not say just take care of yourself rather than just love
No, but
yourself?
taking
I don't know.
no, but taking care of yourself is also taking care of your neighbor, because
Yeah.
there's a
True.
sense where if there are things inside me, I think Jesus mentioned this one of the in the Sermon on the Mount. We actually talked about this. There's a sense where if you are not right, the things that come out
Mm.
of you, the fruits that come out of you will not be good fruits,
True.
right?
True.
So
True.
if your idea of love is twisted, you will give a twisted love to somebody
Mm.
else. So you need to
I
fix
see.
yourself.
Yeah.
But in fixing yourself, you fix your relationship with other people. So we should not just see it as fixing ourselves. We should see it as fixing ourselves and our relationships and the way we relate with other people.
I see.
Right?
Makes
So it's
sense.
not just fixing yourself, but fixing yourself for your community as well.
In conjunction.
All right.